Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the Values Jam guest session series. And Alicia, great to have you here. And to start with, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. So my name is Alicia Sanchez. I am the current Chief AI Officer at MPF Federal, which is a federal consulting group. I live in Central Florida, which is sort of where I grew up. And Central Florida, for those of you who don't know it, is the modeling and simulation capital of the world because it's the only place that the military training systems align with the entertainment industry by design, right? Because we want people to have these wonderful experiences with learning and we want them to be remembered. So I got a PhD from the University of Central Florida, which is here. And I spent about 18 years up in DC working in federal systems. And then about 2 years ago, I switched over to healthcare so that I could get my hands really dirty with AI and promptly got laid off from my AI job, got AI'd right on out of it. And so now I'm with MPF Federal and I couldn't be more thrilled. So thank you so much for having me today.
Well, it's a pleasure. And actually, you talking about AI and values is a real area of interest for me because without a values guide rail, where could AI go?
We're good at, yeah. And hopefully we'll discuss that today. I think there's
Let's
lots of
see.
really
Let's see.
interesting directions.
So I've got the Values Jam card deck here. So what I'm going to do is tip out the cards and I'll just give them a quick shuffle. And what I'd like you to do is think of how many piles of these cards you'd like me to make in front of me to choose from.
Ooh, this is a good one. We're going to start with three.
Three, okay. I'm going to make them different sizes.
Great.
And so now on my left is pile one, on my right is pile three. So which number pile would you like? One, two,
Three.
three, three.
Okay. Not surprisingly, sticking with the three early.
There's a theme here, is there? So let me just count 9, 12, 15, 18. There are 20 cards in this pile. So which number card would you like?
13.
13. You're not Italian, are you?
I am not. But I didn't know. Is that a thing? I actually have a tattoo that has a 13 on my arm. I was born on the 13th, so I've always felt like it's my lucky number.
Oh, well, I don't know if you know this, but 13 is a lucky number in Italy,
I did not
whereas in
know
many
that.
parts of the world it's an unlucky number, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's always been my number.
Okay, well, this is the card you've drawn. How do you feel about that?
I feel great about that.
Okay,
I
so
yeah, that is the card that was yeah. I feel really interested about this.
do you want to say a little bit more about that, about why you feel so good?
Lately I have been doing a lot of reflection about my work, about my practice, about how I interact with other people. And I feel like in the world and at work today, courage is just something that has to come from authenticity, has to come from a place within. And it's not easy to do. Like I've had to do some reckoning with myself of do I actually have the courage to stand behind the things that I think are important for me, which are sort of co-tangential to some of the constructs that you probably typically do. But do I have the courage to accept that as a leader, not everyone's going to be my friend anymore? Right? Do I have the courage to accept that this really is the right thing for me right now and that I should be pursuing it? Do I have the courage to believe that I have earned the place that I have and that I do have something to offer? And so some people would say that's really maybe not as courage related, but I think for me, it comes down to that when we think about imposter syndrome and all of those things. So I think courage is a pretty interesting pick for me today.
And early on, when you were getting into that, you mentioned authenticity.
Mhm.
And there's a person I know called Fabienne Vales who is in the education space. She's French. And when I was talking to her about courage, she pointed out that the French word for heart is cœur, C-O-E-U-R, and that courage really is something from the heart ultimately, right? Because you have to believe in it to do what you're about to do. So I think that connection between courage and authenticity is really, really strong, but sometimes overlooked. Actually, we don't make that connection sometimes. So the first question is a very simple one, and it is, what does courage mean? And then there's a follow-up question, which is more creative and metaphor based, which is around what courage looks like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. So start wherever you wish.
Sure. So to me, when I think about the word courage, we could pull up any Webster's dictionary, but for me, it's being afraid of doing something and doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. And so understanding that, yeah, this is going to be scary, but this is absolutely what I should be doing, and demonstrating that for me, I don't know. I wonder how that lines up with the textbook definition.
Well, whether it does or not, and I don't know. But you've reminded me. I think it's Brene Brown. No, it's not. It's Susan David, I think, who talks about courage not being an absence of fear, but walking hand in hand with fear. And I love that, contrast, the two of them walking together rather than
Mhm.
being these two things that can't exist together. So I get exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like in spite of it almost, right? That it's if it's going to be scary.
And
And that's what vulnerability is in so many ways, right?
yeah,
It's the understanding of, oh, this feels a bit scary. And sometimes it doesn't. I think it's interesting that sometimes it doesn't come off as scary. It might not be something that your system recognizes as scary, but at the core, why do we become so upset about something random? Because it's frightening for us, right? And it's actually a fear response. And I think it's so easy to confuse anger with fear in a lot of ways. Like I might get really angry at a coworker, and it's not that it's truly anger from the sense of what we traditionally think about. It's that I'm actually afraid that they don't respect me, that they don't value me, that they don't think that I'm smart enough, that they don't, and that I fear that that's the way I'm going to be remembered ultimately, or that's how this situation will be portrayed.
yeah, and you're reminding me of a pretty kind of simplistic experience, actually, of it's kind of either like a roller coaster or it's being on the top of a diving board before you jump into the water a long way down. And that sense of fear is kind of, your heart does go faster and you're kind of scared, but like you said just now, you're going to do it,
You're gonna
you
do
know, and
it.
it's
Sometimes you have no choice. You're strapped in. It's happening.
oh,
That's passive courage.
now you've done something. My youngest daughter, she must have been about 4. So this is going back a couple of decades. And we went to a theme park, and I think the ride was called Oblivion. And what it involved was being strapped into a chair, being chunked slowly up to the top of this pole, and then being tipped slightly, and then it just dropping for gravity. And so it took about 10 minutes to get to the top. And after probably 7 or 8 minutes, we're not so far away. Evie said to me, Daddy, I've changed my mind. I,
Well, well,
I don't
sweetheart.
want to, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And so father is like, oh, what do I do? So I tried it's going to be fine, but I really don't want to do this. And in the end, I had to say to her that you have no choice. We can't go back down now. So she's crying really badly.
Oh.
Going, yeah. Then we get to the top, drop to the bottom. We get out of the chair. Can we go again?
She loved it. Yeah. Isn't it amazing how something that, but that gets to like things that we dread, but turn out to be amazing, right? And the things that we tell ourselves, like every night when you get home and you're supposed to meet friends and you're like, I could cancel, I should cancel. But if you go, you're going to have a great time because historically speaking, every time you have actually gone, it's been great, but you have this dread feeling that accompanies it. That's so funny. Poor sweet thing. I'm glad she loved it because it could have gone the other way.
It could have gone the other way. And what you just said there about us talking ourselves out of things, because I think the way you put it, I get the impression that you don't allow that to get in the way too often. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't, unfortunately.
Well,
For better or worse, right? Sometimes it's great. Sometimes I'm like, I just got, I know I have to buck up and do it.
yeah, well, there's a book written by a guy called Jim Lawless called Taming Tigers, and he talks about our inner voice, talking us out of stuff that we want to do. And actually, the one story that I remember from the book more than anything else is he says he's in a bar and he sees this beautiful woman on the other side of the bar, and he makes up his mind that he's going to go and introduce himself. So he says to his friend, "Look, see that woman over there? I'm going to go and introduce myself." And his friend says to him, "You? Look at yourself. Look at her. No chance." So anyway, he overcomes his friend, but then his internal voice keeps going, and it's saying, "Your friend's right, look at you."
Oh,
And he said, so I answered, "Yeah, but I got a great sense of humor. People tell me, and so it's this." And then he describes how he has that battle, decides that he's still going to go and introduce himself, and then all of a sudden finds himself in the gents at a urinal because he's copped out at the last minute. He's
oh
on
no.
his way and then found a way to find a diversion and not done it. So
Oh,
that's you and finding any reason that you can not to go out with those friends, right?
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I love what you said that he said that you said that he said about this rationalization about it, right? Like all of the conditions that go through your head because fear of rejection is very real, right? And that is a legitimate fear. And bless his friend for not saying, "Oh yeah, you should totally go talk to her if you want to," right? For being honest with him because sometimes you have to do that. Like, hey, just so you know, just in case, there's not a high probability of success on this, but you should go for it anyway. And there's probably a lot nicer ways to say it than look at you, look at her. But sometimes it's really difficult to overcome those things in yourself, let alone find out. And sometimes the truth is that it's not the journey that you should be taking, right? Like I'm not going to run for president next year or whenever the next race is, because it is not something that I am qualified for, prepared for, or, I don't think I could, but I've got a great personality my way into some things. And so I think there's the element of that risk taking in yourself when you've done the weighing of the factors and you've gleaned that there is some probability of success, but then there's sort of the external rule based. There is no probability of success here. Now, can you put it out in the world? Can you say, I want to be president and I'm going to work towards that? Much different than I'm going to add myself to the ballot next week and we're going to see what happens and maybe I'll win. And so I think you have to kind of moderate it or temper it with a healthy dose of reality in some cases.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
when I was listening to you then, that's what was coming through was it's this balance of realism and courage.
Mm-hmm.
But where is the balancing point? That's the absolute, well, maybe not skill. I nearly said skill, but sometimes you don't even know where it is, right? Because
Yeah,
sometimes we are capable of more than we think we are. So,
precisely.
like you said about president, it's like, why not?
Why not? Yeah. I mean,
I don't
and
want
lots of
to I don't want to
reasons.
get into politics, but
No, certainly, but
the two candidates that you had last time round, it's like, are those really the two best people that are
yeah.
available in this country to lead it?
Yeah, I used to, one of my old bosses, he was the greatest guy. And the job of president was coming up at the university I was working at. And he's like, yeah, I applied for it. And I was like, really? He's like, well, if they don't find someone better than me, I don't want them to find someone worse, right? Like if I'm the lowest bar, then at least we know that that's the lowest bar. And I was like, well, you know what? That's fair. At least it can't be worse than that. But he was great. I mean, he would have been amazing for it. It's just, it was a political appointee kind of thing. And I was like, I don't know that you're, and he's like, yeah, but at least now we know it won't be worse. I'm like, okay, yeah,
What a great perspective that is, that you're helping to make sure that somebody better than you, at least as good as you, is
at
getting the
least as
job.
good. Yeah, yeah.
And what about that more creative part of this question of when I mentioned the word courage? what images come to mind for you? What feelings come to mind? And what sounds come to mind?
Interesting. So, image for me, for some reason, and I'm sure it's completely predictable, it's an animal. I bet you know exactly which one. It's a lion,
Yeah.
right? Which is so funny because we kind of grew up with this cowardly lion, which was, I think, so intentional to the opposite of what our expectation is from The Wizard of Oz, this construct of, oh, the cowardly lion, which is just such a sort of dissonant moment for us. But so I think that the visual that I have is a lion. If I were to think of sort of a color scheme that surrounds it, for me, it's always black. I have a very strange thing with this dichotomy between black and white, being that white is all color and that black is the absence of. And I don't know why that for some reason has always been. So I do not wear colors. I only wear black. And then I have this predilection towards just black things, right? I have a black car, I had a black dog, like, I don't know why. I just choose and it does make things much easier in the morning. I just reach in, like, shirt, bottom, boom. I know they're going to match because they're black. But I feel like people think that there is some sort of intentionality in that has been often associated with like a counterculture kind of thing or an emo related thing or a stylistic thing. For me, it's that when I have colors on, or when, obviously it's a very colorful world. I love colors. I wear black all the time, but I'm super girly, right? Like it's black hearts, right? It's black, it's all of those things. And so for me, I think it's that when I'm wearing really bright things, I feel like I'm shouting. And for me, there is a level of courage in not feeling compelled to stand out for any other reason than what's inside me. Right. And, aside from exposing the internals, which would not be pleasant for anyone, that's sort of this strange line in the sand that I draw. I remember I was at some bougie wougie event once, and there was someone there who was not unkind to me, but kind of disregarding to me, right? They kind of blew me off. And I was telling a dear friend of both theirs and mine, like, oh, did you meet this important person? I'm like, yeah, they kind of blew me off. And they're like, you're not really great at telling people who you are. And I was like, I am great at not feeling like I need to, though, right? Because if you don't have that level of respect for anyone, then I don't need an introduction. I don't need to say, I'm this and this is why I should be important to you, or I don't feel compelled to. And so I think that kind of associates, I know I'm deviating from your question, with the way that I just kind of, approach the entire world. Like it doesn't matter. I want everyone to either get to know me or not. Not everyone has to, but to form their opinions not based on really anything else other than this. But in a way, I do the opposite by allowing them to form an opinion of me that probably isn't in alignment with who I am. I
Well, and by
commend
the
you.
way, deviation is encouraged in a values jam, right? Because
Oh, good.
deviation is all about where you want to go rather than where you were supposed to go. And so that's all good. And actually, you're making me think that what you've just described I know this is a gross generalization, but it feels very un-American. I don't know whether you get told that very much.
Well, I mean, there are several things that I think could be visually, if we're looking at visual perspective, detected about me that would come off as slightly un-American, and all of your viewers have eyes. So we don't need to address those things. But yeah, un-American, you know what? I don't know though exactly what you mean. Do you mean that perhaps there's a perception that Americans um, are more, I don't know, what do you mean?
Let me explain. So a number of references, but a recent one. So I was on jury service in January, and one of the other jurors was explaining that they'd been on holiday, can't remember where, somewhere in the US. And it was a resort type place, and so there's a pool and lounges and all the rest. And he just described how he witnessed a conversation between two American guys nearby, and it was very loud. So they
Can
didn't know each
imagine.
other. They introduced each other by name, and then it was my title is this and I earn this many dollars. What about you? And I drive this car. What car have you got? Um, so that was, and I'm not suggesting that all Americans are like that, but Americans generally do have a reputation for not being quiet and not being understated. And yet what you described is understated. So that's where I was coming from.
Interesting. I don't know that I think that perhaps there's a level of naivete here in me that I think they're the type of people who do exactly what you said, and that is what we see in media and so frequently, and certainly, in people who are dating or getting to know each other. I don't know that I knew that that might be uniquely American. I think that I just assumed that maybe that type of person is doing that, like that there's a type and that's important to them, right? Because there's a status equality and that maybe people who reach a status, so another deviation. So I don't say this to brag. It might come off braggy at first, but I think we'll get to the interesting part. I have a PhD, right? I worked super hard for it. Nobody gave it to me. I, didn't get in to a lot of schools that I applied for. Busted my butt to get this PhD. And sometimes people will ask me, where did you go to school? Now, I was incredibly fortunate. I live in Central Florida. I did an undergrad, a master's, and a PhD at the same school. Sometimes that's not really smiled upon, right? People think it's better to diversify. Anyway, I did them all. And sometimes people ask, where did you go to school? I happen to, because I live here and because I got in, go to the number one school in the US for modeling and simulation. However, when people ask that question and when I hear other people get degrees from other universities, like, do you think people look down on you? I'm like, only the people that ask, because only the people that ask, they only ask if they already think they've won, if they already think their school is better. You don't hear someone from one of the sub schools say, hey, where did you go to school? Right? Because it's inconsequential to the construct. And so that's the type I think that I mean, the type who's always just making sure that they are just slightly above you. So when a friend asks, oh, do you think if I go to the school and someone asked me, like, is it embarrassing for me to say? And I was like, it doesn't matter because no matter what, the person that asked already knows that their school is better because they've only gone to the number one school or the number two school at the bottom. It's just a question you don't ask unless you think you're going to win it. Unless you're asking for regional purposes, like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, you lived in Kentucky? Where did you go to college? Because I
yeah.
know the University of Kentucky, and maybe no. So it's that sort of vibe though that I think that you get from that, right? Like, so I don't lead with it. I don't lead with, oh, I went to the number one school in the US for this one thing, because it's absolutely inconsequential and it is a bit not insulting, but I don't want to make anyone feel bad. I don't value their education any less. I don't doubt that they went through something just as rigorous and just as trying and that they had to apply themselves in the same way. But when I hear that sort of line of questioning, oh, what do you do? I say, I'm a scientist. Oh, where do you work? I work for a federal contracting group. Oh, like only much further in the conversation. Oh, I'm the chief AI officer. Oh, I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
PhD, right? Because I think that there's so much that comes with some of their statements that probably that well, they don't define me, right? And this has been a problem for me. I have been told that perhaps I am a non-traditional PhD C-suite person, right? That I don't necessarily fit into that mold. And that makes me happier than anything that is possible because I didn't have to conform. I was fortunate. I know lots of people do have to conform to be successful
Yeah.
in their career paths, but I didn't have to. But I love being able to be a role model for people who might not think that they fit in on a stage in this place in this that you can't be relatable and nice and caring and authentic and be that at the same time. So I never
Absolutely.
lead with it. I always leave it way, like you have to really get to know me before I get there. But yeah, that level of superficiality, I think, is just related to the conversation that your friend overheard.
Yeah, I mean, what I think you're describing there is this quiet courage that we're talking about, and I can relate to this because, and funnily enough, there's a Florida connection here.
Oh,
We have a kindness summit happening in Fort Myers in
oh,
May, and when we were creating the logo, it's called the K20 initiative, and I decided that I wanted a lowercase k to make the point that kindness does not have to be loud, it doesn't have to be big, it can be quiet and small, but nonetheless powerful. And yet, other people were saying, "Oh no, but we need to compete with other people's strong, loud brands and all." Anyway, we've got a lowercase k, and
good.
since then, people have now started to say, I love the quiet confidence that that displays because you don't
Yes,
feel the need that you have to be big and shout and all this sort of thing. So
yeah.
it's been funny the initial reaction against, but now people are actually seeing it as a strength. So I'm
Embracing
just
it.
reinforcing what you were saying, I think.
No, that's lovely. I love the idea of especially is the K smaller and then the IND is still big?
So it doesn't, in the word kind, it appears normally. So it just the logo is a lowercase k20, and then
Love
it's
that.
called Kindness Without Borders. It's very young, so it's the inaugural summit, and so we're very excited. And it's not creating yet another kindness movement. Instead, it's looking to create a conducive environment for all of the existing players to be able to connect with each other, collaborate, and do more together. So again, if we're successful, you won't know about it because it's kind of a non-brand. That's what we're aiming
Oh,
for it to be.
I love that. And first of all, I don't think there could ever be a market that is too saturated with kindness, right? Like, I don't think that, I don't know how much competition out there is for kindness conferences or events or committees or organizations. Not enough, clearly. But I love that you guys will be a unifying force and a way for all of those different elements to have a place to see if they can further saturate with their messages and share. That's lovely.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to put it into practical terms, let me take an example from the world of education. You've talked about PhDs. Imagine a PhD researcher in kindness in a university in Sydney, Australia. And through the K20 and its infrastructure, being able to connect with a counterpart in Florida and in
Yeah.
Beijing and in London, and perhaps by doing that, being able to tap into funding that would be exponentially greater than anything they would have been able to do independently. So
Hmm.
that's where we think we could benefit enormously.
That's a
Um,
beautiful mission.
and then I've got one other story I'd love to share with you
Yes.
about, and it relates to courage here. I was at a conference in Cape Town, and it was a session between students and very senior educators. And the event went well. They had mixed panel discussions and everything else. The young people handled themselves brilliantly. And then the chancellor of the host university invited questions from the audience. And one young man, a student, explained that he had been rejected by this university where the event was taking place, and he was asking this question of the chancellor. And he said now he's having to go to a different university, and he feels really bad about that. And what are the chancellor's thoughts about this? So it's like, whoa, what
Yeah,
a
what do you
question
say?
to
What's the
ask.
I can't wait to hear what the chancellor said.
Well, this is it. What he said was, uh, "You might not believe this, but 10 years ago, I was you. I was refused by this university when I applied to be an undergraduate, and now here I am."
And now here I am. You could be chancellor someday
And
too.
this could be you in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
So I suggest to you that the university you're at is the perfect one for you.
So
work
cool.
hard, and see what happens.
Uh, and so that gets to a level of one of the undercurrents I think that goes along with courage is grittiness and resilience, right?
Yeah,
Because there's the success initially, the probability of that, all of the factors that go into that. And then what do you do with failure, right? Because we have to face it, we're all going to. And how you continue to proceed. When in a story from my layoff, my unceremonious layoff, right? I have been afforded the luxury of having a great reputation in what I do. And me moving, I so when I was with the Department of Defense for so many years, I was their game czar. So I worked on video games. I, was sort of a publicly known person in that sub area. Like I certainly had a great reputation. When I went to Cigna, I went to go work operational AI. So now I'm one of many. And, my boss has no idea what I've ever done, and he could truly care less. One of the smartest men that I've ever worked for, smartest person, because I've worked for some really smart people, and I've been very fortunate in that. And so he's doing this layoff thing that we both know. You get an email any given Tuesday, it could happen. I've cried already, and now I'm at the meeting. And, I am 100% just focused on, I have these files. We have this meeting this day. Like, these are things. He's like, hey, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to. This was my work. This is my project. I
yeah,
still want to see this be successful. And so we get to the end of the meeting, and you're about to say goodbye to someone that you may never see again. It's a breakup, right? Like you've got all of these emotions. And so I told him, I hope our paths cross again. And he was like, yeah, sure, me too. Yeah, okay. And we hung up, and I was relating that story to a dear friend of mine in Canada. And she was like, you don't hope you ever see that guy again. And I was like, oh no, but I do. I do, because I want him to see me killing it in this field. I want him to have first row tickets. I know he didn't make the decision to, that the larger organization did. But yes, I do hope our paths cross again. And I hope they cross sooner than later, right? Because I still want to look really good when it happens too, and all of these like other subcurrents. But it's one of those inflection moments where you turn around, you're like, wow, I did something that it probably what might not have been considered, but I was very proud of myself in that moment. Not because I had said anything that might be less than like, is there anything I can do, or pleaded, or anything that is not going to happen, but because I truly believed that. I truly believed, even at that lowest moment, that I am going to come back from this and I am going to do amazing things in this field. And it's one of the prouder moments of my adult life.
and
Lots of
actually,
great
when
childhood things.
I think it's coming through for me here that there's a direct relationship between your level of belief and authenticity, and perhaps you not needing to have so much courage. Because, you relating that story, somebody might say to you, oh my God, that was so brave for you to do that. Whereas for you, it's not, because you know that you're going to be fine.
I'm gonna be, yeah. I don't know. In the moment, I'm not sure I believed it fully. In the moment, it was, it's in the moment of, complete rejection, and like I've worked my whole life, and but I did believe, deep down, I did believe it enough that it was going to be true to say it. Otherwise, it was just being brash and rude, right?
Yeah, and I have been made redundant, laid off as well, and you're just bringing back some feelings about that, and I'm thinking about courage because that's what we're talking about. I remember pointing out that due process had not been followed,
Oh,
and that they were in to pay me a bit more than they were wanting to pay me as a payoff.
very nice.
And I ended up being having a meeting with a pretty senior guy in the organization. And I said to him, the thing is, you and your organization have acted very unprofessionally. And I don't know why it triggered him.
Oh, did it? Oh,
but
that's the
he
nightmare.
completely lost it. Are you calling me unprofessional? And I remember saying, I'm not calling you unprofessional. I'm saying that
Totally.
you and your
That's the opposite.
organization have acted in an unprofessional way. And, the backstory was basically they had made a decision that it was going to be me that should leave before they had gone through any selection process. So that it was kind of just not done well. Um, and in terms of courage, a bit like you, I believed that I was going to be fine. It was a bit of an inconvenience that I wasn't going to be doing what I wanted to do there. Um, and to have a straight conversation like that, because my attitude at the time was, well, if you're going to make that choice, then we'll have to do it on terms that suits both sides,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you're not going to change that decision now.
Yeah,
You have to shift into, okay, what is going to be best for both of us and me is a
yeah,
part of both of us, which it typically isn't in an org.
yeah. That's right. That's right. Now, so you said about deviations, so let's just get back to finish off the metaphor bit of this question. So, um, we talked about black, and by the way, black and black car outside, and I absolutely associate with in the morning. I don't want to have to make 100 decisions about what I need to do before I step outside the door. It's like
Yeah,
it's so much easier.
so much easier.
Anyway,
I save a ton of
um,
money too.
it's what?
I save a ton of money
Oh,
because I don't have to, well, this doesn't go with that. Nope, it all goes.
it all
It all
goes.
goes.
So then the other metaphor questions were around courage and what sound comes to mind, and courage and what feelings come to mind.
Oh, feelings. Oh, you want to talk about feelings? Oh boy, here we go. I'm not great with feelings, but I feel a lot of things. So sounds, I don't know why, but screaming
Whoa.
is the sound that I think I'm and it's not, and maybe it's more of a battle cry. It's not one of those visceral fear screams. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've screamed. I realized recently that I had never been in a situation where I screamed. And then something just a couple weeks ago scared me enough, just enough of a jolt that a noise came out of my mouth, which I was so thankful for because I was always like, I'm going to be the polite one when I'm getting murdered, right? Someone's going to be stabbing me, and I'm like, please don't stop hurting me. I'm not going to scream because I have never heard myself truly scream in pain
And you
and
did.
fear. And so for me, I think, and maybe that's the underpinning of why that is what this is evoking in me, right? Because I don't know if in those moments, wow, that's very full circle now, that I have the courage to truly scream. But then I did it and it was completely unconscious. And I was like, oh, I think we were at like Halloween Horror Nights, one of those. And it was, we were at a haunted house, one of those big, very serious types in Philadelphia. They do it at a old penitentiary, and I screamed out loud for the first time in my life out of fear. And I was like, "Oh, I am gonna scream! I'm not gonna die quietly in an alley, right? Like,
So
this is
you,
amazing news." So that's the sound that it evokes for me,
gosh. And
very strangely.
what I love about these values jams is some of the similarities that show up, and we've had a load of them so far, and then the stark differences. So, my sound for courage is a very quiet intake of breath,
Interesting. Yeah,
and
the
then you go and do it.
yes, that deep, because I do that. Like when I have to give presentations a lot, and sometimes they're very big audiences, and sometimes when I'm talking about my own things, great. When I have to talk on a topic that I get very nervous. I was at one last week and I looked down, my hand was shaking so badly that I had to like unbutton my coat and put my hand in it, right? So I look like a teapot because I'm like, I'm not gonna let anyone see me shaking. But there always is that last moment of and I'm going to do it. And I love that that's your sound. That is amazing. That might be the
Yeah.
sound I now forever associated with it. It just didn't come through for me in the moment. That's a fantastic representation.
And then what about what you said you didn't do feelings very well?
Oh
So,
yeah.
do you
You
want to?
know, so yeah, if you gave me a list of feelings, I could probably pick a few off. But I think pride Is pride a feeling? Is pride a feeling?
Can be.
Okay, good. It is in this case. We're going to go with pride is a feeling, vulnerability, if that categorizes a feeling, fear, certainly, because I do think that's an element. I don't know if these are feelings or if these are beliefs, but like self-esteem, ego, which I have a tremendously large ego. And I don't mean that expressively, but I mean that internally. Like, I really think I could do a lot of really great stuff, right? And
Well, you
sometimes
did
I can,
mention the
sometimes I
presidency.
can't. But it turns out I know this about myself. People are like, oh, ego. And I'm like, you have no idea what's going on underneath here. I just don't express it that way. Right. And I think that a lot of people think ego is also very out loud and
Yeah.
expressed. And it's like, no, if ego is your own feelings of self-efficacy of your belief in the ability to do something, then enormous ego. Because I do think that I am fairly capable of a lot of things.
That's a great answer. And so feelings for me is, I think confusion, because
Interesting.
when I think about courage, it's I'm going to do this because I want to do it so much, but it's scaring the shit out of me at the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
time. And how do you deal with both of those at the same time? It's like pretty confusing. So that's the feeling that I'd end with. Now, in Values Jam, Alicia, you have the opportunity to ask your own question. And so, and if you have the answer off the top of your head, feel free. And if you'd rather, then I can go first. So ask your own question about courage, beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how.
Beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how. I'm writing them down as if I can't recite them. I just did. Oh my gosh. Okay, so my own question about courage, but I would I want to ask you a question, right? I don't want to give you a question for me because if I start by planning, oh, this is going to be a question for me, I am going to unconsciously or consciously make it like some great story that I have. So I want to think of a question for you
Okay,
and then, challenge
and then
myself
respond.
to answer it. Yeah. Um, what would you tell someone in any of those moments, not like the moment where your child is already strapped in and committed and you've bought your ticket and you can't get off this ride, but how do you prepare someone or counsel them when they lack courage? Can it
This
be
is,
counseled? I don't know.
yeah, okay. And I don't want to sound flippant, but an immediate response comes, which is, what's the worst that can happen?
I mean, death, dismemberment, public
That
humiliation.
Well, if that's true, then of course it tempers what should be done. But I do remember giving a talk on leadership at an event, and there was a question from the audience. Somebody said, I've got this idea. I think it should be done. It will add a lot of value, but I don't think that my boss is going to think it's a very good idea, and so I'm not. Da, da, da. And I said to them, what's the worst that can happen?
They're going to say no. Yeah, is the word.
And and then they said, oh, yeah, nothing really bad is going to happen. So it's like, why would you not do that? And actually, this is, I ran a leadership summit in Europe for a small group of about 50 people, and we had a black tie awards do. And there were people from different countries, and I was sat on a table with a German guy to my right. And at the back of the room on a table, there were several ladies from Russia. And Tobias, the guy sat to my right, said, Alan, why are the ladies from Russia, why do they have flowers in their hair? And I said to Tobias, why not?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I would be interested in if there's something culturally that Russian ladies always wear flowers in their hair, but flowers are pretty. Put them in your hair. Make that choice for yourself.
And so the response to your question is, like I said, I don't want it to come across as not very deeply thought through, but it did come pretty immediately, which is this thing around what is the worst that can happen, really? Because sometimes, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about our internal voice, It
Mhm.
builds it up into this big problem
Yeah.
that doesn't really exist apart from in our heads, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think, once you'd said it, I think absolutely. But I think that I go like one level deeper sometimes. If in the example that you'd given, with the student asking the professor or you, sorry, in the lecture, uh, I want to submit this paper. I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's going to get in, but I think it's important work. Okay, so what's the worst that could happen? They say no. But I also like to explore, and this is what I think I would do in this situation. What is the best that could happen? Not the best being they just say yes, but in doing so, have you now shared that I'm interested in this topic, that I want to do more, that I sometimes, a job would come up where I used to work and I would tell, people that I thought were probably not going to get it. I would tell them put in for it. And they're like, well, why would I do that? And it's not because, it can't be worse. It would be because I want you to signal that you're interested in getting there, right? That opens doors in and of itself that wouldn't have been opened if you just do nothing. That sometimes the inaction is the worst that you can do, or the worst that could happen. The worst that could happen is that I don't submit it. And I continue to believe that it's important work. And my professor has no idea that this is something that I'm interested in, or that I'm capable of, or that I want this. And so I think that's how I would tackle that one.
I think that's much better and a much fuller answer because what I was doing was addressing the kind of transactional situation, whereas what you were doing was looking at the bigger picture and it being just a small part of that big picture and what are the repercussions. So that's a much better answer. And it feels like a good place to draw this values jam to a close, actually, with that profound thought, actually. And we always finish a values jam with the same question, which is what are you encouraged to do differently about courage as a result of our conversation?
I, having had this conversation, and when the card popped up, I felt great about it, right? Because it was like, I think this is something I can talk about. But I don't think it's something that I have previously ever thought about talking about with other people. And I think that that is going to be the wonderful benefit of having had this meaningful conversation with you and getting to meet you, which has been amazingly wonderful. But now that we've sort of peeled back a couple of layers and that we've both expanded our thought on what this means at that really individual level construct, I now feel like this is a conversation that I could and should be having with other people who are making decisions and struggling. My big mantra for 2026 is working out loud, meaning share what you're doing with others and make sure that, even if there's no audience for it, that you are still standing in front of what you work. And I think that courage is such a fundamental element of it that I had not expressly been really trying to bring to light. And so thank you. So I think that is what I'm going to take from this. And that's where I think that I could be impactful in the future.
Okay, and if I could push you, what is the first baby step in that direction that you could take?
Like with the and so I have this wonderful group of colleagues and peers, and when we have these opportunities, I think that this is now something that I can bring up immediately, like, hey, it would be really courageous if you like. Sometimes that's what it takes, right? If you can't find it in yourself and someone tells you, hey, I think this would be a courageous step, that they will be able to think differently about what their approach is, and they
Yeah,
will be able to think about what, because I don't think we think about it stemming from fear, right? It's fear of failure in a lot of cases, it's fear of rejection, all of those things. But I don't think we identify it when in the moment we're just, oh, I don't know, oh, I don't know, in that decision making. If I can help really think that through with people, I think that that leaves them in a better place.
yeah. And for me, it's easy to remember because it's what we just touched on just now when you made the point about asking what's the best thing that could happen. And this relates to another area that I'm interested in, which is the difference between the known and the unknown.
Mm,
Because most people accept that the known is a tiny percentage of what is, and therefore the unknown is a big part of it. And yet we confine ourselves much of the time to the known.
Yes,
And courage is something about stepping into the unknown.
unknown.
And your suggestion of not only looking at what's the worst thing that could happen, but what's the best thing that could happen, and not only for the individual, but for everybody in their environment and perhaps outside of their environment, then you start to paint a wonderful picture of possibility. And it makes courage seem so much easier and more common sense than fear to be feared of.
Yes, I mean, in some elements, just addressing the fear head on and stripping away what it really means can be all you need to get past it. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to hear you'll think of it differently now too. That's lovely.
So, Alicia, you're a fully fledged values jammer now, and thank you so
Yay.
much for having
Oh,
the
thank you.
courage to join me for this one.
Well, thank you for helping me identify and find it within myself because I think I'm going to be pretty courageous today and probably for the next foreseeable future.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you so much.